Hello everyone, World's Biggest Geek here. My name is Kevin, back with a review here today. And I just finished the season finale, Season 2, X-Men 97. And I just say, guys, it was truly remarkable. It was insane. It was wild. It was crazy. I was like, wow, they did an outstanding job of bringing all these characters together. Like, I love the dynamic. I love how it all intertwine and connect to the biggest threat of all time. And it truly was like the most breathtaking episode. Like I said, there was a lot of tragedies, a lot of sacrifices in this show. But like I said, it was just truly an extraordinary, like, awesome event that just was like, wow. Like, they did an incredible job of telling this perfect, awesome story for the X-Men to know to take on one big threat that will finally change the fate of the future. So further ado, let's get into it. So of course, the episode kicks off with Bishop and Forge making these time bracelets. Like, wow, I thought inventing time travel was crazy, and now they're like, we have to, Bishop's like, we have to get the X-Men to the 90s, and now they're like, so there are two sets of teams set in different timelines. So now we have to find where they are, where we're going to be, and we got to get them back here before altered times history itself. So now, Forge goes to the future to find the future X-Men, which is Cyclops, Jean Grey, Wolverine, Morph, and Storm. So Forge goes to the future because of Storm, and he finds her like, oh, we have to, bring everyone back. We have to fix all this right away. But as time progresses, they're like, okay, Cyclops and Jean feel bad because they can't spoil Nathan's future, because if it does, it may change something. It may alter it. It may affect the timeline. Who knows? So as they try to know, okay, well, we can't tell him we're his parents, but we want to be here for him. And Forge is like, look, we only have a few minutes. We only have one bracelet to get us back and forth in time. And if we don't, then, we're going to change everything that can affect it. So, Scott, Jean, and Nathan go for a walk. But as they go for a walk, they get abducted by Apocalypse's horsemen. And they're on this train. So now like, oh, they were here. Something happened. Someone abducted them. So as they're on this train, they tell Nathan, like, look, Nathan, we can't tell you this, but you are our son. And we need you, you have the telepathic abilities of Madeline Pryor. So we need you to access those powers. We believe in you. So now he fully, knows his abilities. He's strong. And of course, the fighting sequence when Storm freezes all these, horsemen, one that was playing a drum, one lady with an umbrella that, shoots bees and plagues out of her mouth, and this big old gigantic yellow monster with an axe, which was dope. So I love the dynamic. And then they break the train to this facility of Apocalypse and they free all the people. But one of the horsemen's servants is like, oh, my lord, the train has been destroyed. We must get you out of here. He's like, no, I must endure the X-Men. I must go back to the 90s to beat them at their advantage, beat them where I can finally be stronger again. So Apocalypse, boom, is shot to the past to go to the 90s to stop the X-Men at their most vulnerable. So now, now the future team goes back to the past, but now we go to the team in the Egyptian times, which is Beast, Nightcrawler, Rogue, Magneto, and Professor X. So they help this young straggler who is Abenur, who is known as Apocalypse. So he's like, I've been abandoned by my mother, and now I want to be strong. But this pharaoh known as Ramata has taken over the entire Egypt itself because of his abilities. So now they're like, oh yeah, Ramata is taking over the village. And now as all five of them return back to the cave, they try the time machine, but it doesn't work. They said maybe that person in the city has future tech that we can use to get back to the present. And now as they work together, now Ramata, who is known as Cain the Conqueror, is the one with that future tech in Egypt. So now they're like, oh, we have to work together. We have to stop them. They're like, Professor X goes to Magneto, like, you are telling him what he is. But if we can help him alter his future, we can help him to show that maybe we can live in a world where mutants do not have to be living in fear anymore. If we can do that, he could be the beginning of mutant kind. He could show that humans do not need to fear us. We don't have to be afraid of what we are. As they return back to the cave, Abin Senor was like, oh, what is this? And they said, traitors. See, they work for the enemy. Like, who are you? And Ramata, one of the robots that had access, found their hideout. And he pushes a button, this big old beam comes out of nowhere and blows up the cave. Now Apocalypse is still fighting them. And then Bishop was disguised as one of Apocalypse's soldiers. And now, it's like, hey, we got to go back, we have to, do all this to make it right. But Magneto breaks his time bracelet. Hey, why'd you do that? I'm saving our lives, Bishop, so that we don't get, disintegrated, because we only can do one trip. So now, as they go into this campsite, now they're camping, but Professor X gets a visit in his dreams and in a mind. Oh, Professor Charles Francis Xavier, like, who are you? I am Ramata. I am known as Nathan. I have gone by so many alter names in my past. If you let him into this temple, it will change my future and will affect all life. Oh, you just want to see what's in the celestial temple. So as they get there, now that, they see all these ruins, they see all these, things on the wall, and it shows this great, powerful blue being known as Apocalypse. And then, Abenur was like, oh, I've been here before. You're stopping me from my fate, my destiny. Like, no, if you do this, you will become something you don't want to be. So as they enter the Celestial, which is known as Ezon the Searcher. So Professor X, when he accessed one of the robots' mind, they said, I am the one beyond all. I am the one who has witnessed the beginning. So Ezon the Searcher was the one who was in the robot's brain, was communicating, saying, I am the one of time. I am the one of the future and the present. So, Ezon the Searcher was the beginning. So when Apocalypse went in there, he became what he was. Now he had this ship, he had this temple. He was like, now I'm going to destroy Ramata and his kingdom to reclaim mine. I will finally become what I was meant to be. So Magneto, he sends everyone back. So Bishop and the rest of the game went to the future, but Professor X and Magneto stayed behind. And now, as they get closer, Ramata puts on his Kane outfit, tells one of the Pharaoh ladies, my dear lady, this will be the fate of you. For me, I must get out of here and escape. So he travels back to the future, but Apocalypse creates this gigantic black hole that destroys it. But Magneto's like, oh, it's electromagnetic interference. I can do it. And Professor's like, no. And he sends Professor X out into the desert. And Magneto's holding this black hole. He's trying to contain it. He's doing as much as he can. He's exerting all his energy to save the people of this village. They don't know him, but they're saving all these people. And all of a sudden, Magneto sacrifices. But yes, he was injured. He was wounded. But Apocalypse comes back and said, you claim to be a teacher, but you failed to see the lesson. As he walks to Magneto, like, get away from him. Like, no, Professor, lie to him as you so often lie to me. Tell him it will be all right. And he's like, Magnus, I'm sorry. And then he's like, Charles, I'm sorry. And Apocalypse destroys Magneto and throws his helmet. He said, alas, only a coward feels mighty when stepping on ants. And, Professor X is like, he's devastated. He lost a true friend. And Bishop comes back in time. He's like, Professor, I'm sorry. We have to go. So now as they all return to the future. But before we get into all that, now we meet this team X Factor. Strongman, Wolfbane, Maverick, Polaris, and Havoc are all working for Cooper for Washington. So now, kids are going to the X Mansion, but the X Mansion is destroyed. They said, fear not, kids. X Factor is here. We're here to save the day. But then Cable builds his own team, X-Force. And they had Archangel, Psylocke, Sunspot, Jubilee. They had the most epic team because they were against X Factor for what they're doing. Because X Factor was just taking the mutants and locking them up. So now Cable's like, I'm building my team. He meets Sunspot and Jubilee at this arcade. He's like, oh, aren't you a little old to be playing games? Hey, this is my life. Whatever I do, this is what I do. Look, I'm building a team. We're gonna honor what the X-Men were. So now, Jubilee gets taken by X Factor, and Polaris is like, okay, well, hey kid, I'll give you a few minutes to get out. So Jubilee frees all them, and Havoc, now Polaris is playing dumb. Hey, what happened? How did they all escape? Like, really? You want to play dumb just because, you let Jubilee get out of here and we interrogate her, telling her that she can't, she's working with Cable, who's a fugitive. X-Force is against the law and all that. So now, okay, yeah, they're trying to do all these things to save mutant kind and give them the freedom that they want. But also, we get to a Weapon X episode with Wolverine, Maverick, Sabretooth, Lady Deathstrike, and so now they go to Weapon X because there was a post-credit scene where Captain America and Black Widow meet Wolverine and say, hey, here's a file for X Factor. Like, I'm trying to bring the old team back. So Maverick, Lady Deathstrike, Sabretooth, and Morph and Wolverine go to the Weapon X facility. But what happens was these animals were possessed with green blood, slime. So they had no idea what was going on until we meet the Bruja, one of the most fearsome bugs in the galaxy. And one of the professors was alive, but it wasn't the professor. It was one of the Brood who took over the professor's body, and they killed him. So they were like, hey, let's all split up. Let's split up. So Morph, Sabretooth, Lady Deathstrike go down to find him, but Maverick and Wolverine go their own way. And Maverick's like, oh, get out of here, get out of here. And Wolverine was possessed by one of the Brood. And I have to say, he was dope. He was crazy. But they said that the Brood could not survive the adamantium process. They said, what if we get Wolverine to that chamber? And as we get him in that chamber, we can get him back his old life, which they did. So Morph turned into Jean, and Cyclops is like, hey, come on, Logan, you can do this. Come on, friend. They throw him in the chamber, and as they activate, adamantium process starts. And now, the glass starts cracking, the water starts coming out, and boom, Wolverine is back with the claws. He's back, slicing him, cutting him up. It was crazy. I was like, wow. And then Morph is like, don't you think it's hard to live with that type of killer instinct? He's like, hey, kid, this is my life. I was born this way. You can't judge me for what I am. I'm a monster. This is my fate and my future. This is what I can do. So now, Morph is kind of scared, like, okay, this is truly insane. And all these things are like affecting, what Wolverine's gone through. But now, we also go to Colossus and his sister were at Genosha. So now when the Genosha incident happened, Magic sacrificed herself to save her brother. So then, now Magic has passed on, and now Colossus joins Exodus and the apostles of Magneto. And they're like, we built this island, we're doing everything. But Creed, who I never knew, was Nightcrawler's half-brother because of Sabretooth and Mystique. And so Creed is like, mutants are wrong, we must kill them, we must kill them. So the apostles of Magneto are coming in to stop Creed from this election, and Nightcrawler's like, this is my brother, I have to save him. So now they go to this island, and like, oh, Exodus is like in charge of everything, and they're like, yes, we will judge, like, dear Colossus, brother, can we give him a fair trial? So it's like, fine, we'll give Creed a trial. And as they give him a trial, like, oh, he's like, you hate mutants because of your father Sabretooth. Like, oh, I can't stand him. He abandoned me. He gave me away. I don't want to talk. I don't want to, I was never my father. He wanted me to be like him, but I couldn't be like him because I wasn't born like that. And when they got into that fight, Exodus and Nightcrawler, they knew how to fight so well. It was like so gnarly and insane. But of course, Kree shot Exodus, and Nightcrawler teleported Kree to the snowy place, and that's when it's like, oh, you can't do this. You killed an innocent mutant. Look, I'm not your you may be my brother, but I will always disown you because you will never be like me. I will never be like you. So now, Nightcrawler just leaves him and just disappears. But then as Professor X and Cyclops and Jean go back to Genosha, they're in the Danger room. And Danger comes out, and Danger was bad and brutal because Professor X kept doing the simulation of Magneto dying from Apocalypse. And so Danger is recording, like they're locking down the house. Danger flies to Genosha, but then Polaris just does all that. Bitch like, hey, I'll absorb that energy and we could do it together. And she just unleashes like, Polaris, you are the daughter of Magneto. You are more powerful. I know, he gave you up as a child, but he is still your blood. He is your kin. And she destroyed Danger. I was like, Polaris is dope. But then on Genosha, Professor X decides to build a headquarters known as X-Corp. So now they have this building in the middle of Genosha to rebuild Genosha, to give the place that Genosha should have been for so many years for a place of mutants to stay. But now, as we get into a post-credit scene, Apocalypse resurrects Gambit. And now Gambit is alive as one of the Horsemen. So now they go, so now they're like, oh, Gambit, so X-Force goes to X-Corp to talk to the X-Men. And they said, Rogue, we have something for you. There was a play card, and they know it was Gambit. So now Professor X puts on Cerebro, and he finds Gambit in New Orleans. So now he brings all the thieves of New Orleans to say, hey, I came back. I invited you all. And he used them to control all the thieves that he used to work with. So now Gambit, who has Apocalypse's, Gambit has his abilities, is because he's controlling him. So he's like, so now like, oh, he takes Rogue and Nightcrawler, bring him back to his place. And he's like, I've been brought back to life from the darkness. This has given me the ability to, rule and reign this powerful world. So now X-Force is like, we got to stop him. So X-Force and X-Men join forces to stop him. And that hero shot where they all come out the jet together was awesome. But you know who was more crazy? Professor X. He took him to the astral plane and fought. He was in armor. He was slicing him, taking him down. I was like, Professor X is lit. And they fought as much as they can to take on Gambit. But when you realize Apocalypse was in Gambit's body because he had to transfer his body into someone else to survive. So now it's like, oh, X-Force, Gambit was, Cable was going to shoot him. And they, boom, threw the gun out of Cable's hand because no, that's Remy. Remy's still in there. So Rogue, she reached in to pull him out. But, Apocalypse was still pushing him back because he needed that body to survive. So now it's like, okay, so Cooper's like, we need, X-Force, we have to work together to take on the X-Men. We have one common enemy. We must take on the X-Men to stop them. So now Cooper, X-Factor, and X-Force join forces at X-Corp to stop the entire X-Men together. So as they work together, okay, well now, this is the beginning of, we got a big common threat. So Rogue goes in that ship that Apocalypse had that was in the water. And now she goes to ease on the Searcher. It's like, well, in return, you must do what you must love. And you must give me something in return. So Rogue sacrificed herself. And he's like, I'll see you guys on the other side. So Rogue knew the consequence. Like, hey, if I do this, I'm sacrificing myself, and I'm gonna go do this to save Remy. But then as they fight, X-Force, X-Factor, they're working together. They're stopping this threat. And now as they stop, and you're like, oh my gosh, the battle's coming on. Cooper's like, we got to stop them. Humans are in Sentinels shooting the building down, taking everything. As they finally get to Gambit, Gambit is awake, but, Cable shoots him, pop, and he's dead. But what happens is Apocalypse has been resurrected in his body. He's like, see, Professor, now they're my X-Men. You are the teacher. You failed the lesson. You must always know that this was going to happen. But then all of a sudden, Rogue comes in, boom, goes through Apocalypse, take him out, and turns him into a gym. And she goes to Cable, I think you know what to do with this. And as she does it, everything is free, but there was a consequence. She's like, in order to save you, Remy, I had to sacrifice. But now you know who sacrificed. So Hank holds a Bible in his hand. And Nightcrawler stayed behind like, oh, he's on the search like, you dare to find her sacrifice. Like, no, I want you to trade lives with me, with her. I want to be a seed. I want to be a memory. I want my team to know I will always be with them in spirit. And, you rely on all this. No. He's like, I rely on faith. Faith is what I need. And I will do faith as I will do for my friends. So now you're like, oh, Nightcrawler stayed behind because not only he did it for love, but he did it for the fate of his friends. And now he's with Izon the Searcher because they said of a price that if you stay behind, you will stay behind and be sacrificed for the ones you love. And Nightcrawler did it for love, not just because he cared about his family, but he knew that he wants to let them be in spirit to always know what they wanted to be. And ladies and gentlemen, that is the conclusion of X-Men 97. Yes, there was a post-credit scene where Mystique shoots Cooper, and now that is the end of X-Men season 92. For a great show like this, 97, the X-Men truly were phenomenal. They all won their costumes. Every character was amazing. The whole threat was Apocalypse. But now season 3 will be coming out next year, which I cannot wait. This is truly the best incredible thing of all time. And my goodness gracious, guys, it was the best. It was the craziest. And now we finally get to enjoy a great, awesome new take of why the X-Men are always the best and greatest team. Well, that does it to everyone. I hope you guys have an awesome, great day. I'll talk to you guys later. Be cool, be awesome, be fantastic, be the greatest people you are, because you're truly the greatest people of all time in history. To me, my X-Men. Bye, everyone. Take care.